everyone, and welcome back to the Brown Girls Guide podcast, where we discuss everything we wish we knew growing up, or actually, literally, just everything in general these days. Today, we are back with episode 3 of season 2, and we have another exciting guest this week.
Yes, hi everyone, and thanks for joining us again. And we are very excited to introduce our guest for this week. The topic today is kind of heavy in a way, so we invited someone who would help us lighten it up a bit. But before we jump in, Kelly, what are you drinking today?
Amber, I feel like everyone knows me well enough now to know that I'm drinking a Chica's Odd Buns. Let me just see, what am I drinking? A Cabernet Sauvignon, 2019. What does it say? Ripe blackberry and cedar aromas that is followed by a smooth palate and framed by mint and dark chocolate flavors. It is from the coastal region. It literally does not even say which coastal region. For all I know, it's Durban, but it's from coastal region.
Durban, who knows?
Yeah. So Chica's Odd Bun number 815, if anyone is actually interested in that at all. What are you drinking?
So me today, I went on Uber Eats and I chose the cheapest wine, which was a good choice because it's actually really good. It's the Bay Pinotage from 2020. It also is from a coastal region, but at least it says Western Cape, so we know it's somewhere here. Yeah, but it's actually one of the better Pinotages I've had this year. This is really good. So it's the Bay one, in case anyone wants to try it. By anyone, I mean you, Kelly. So
okay.
It's really good.
And our mothers who always listen to this podcast religiously.
Yeah, and mommy, this is a good one. I know you don't like dry wine, but this is a good one.
Okay, cool. Well, now that we've gotten that out of the way, let's move on to introducing today's guest. It is the one and only Mel Jones. Mel, welcome to our podcast, and thank you so much for taking the time to chat to us today.
Woohoo! Exciting things. Wine happening. Love Odd Buns. I am a huge fan because what people don't know about Odd Buns is that you can actually get really, really good wine, but because it's not labeled, so you're not paying the excessive prices. So I love me some Odd Buns. Also, secondly, work for Uber Eats. Must be nice. Thirdly, episode 3, season 2 already, and I only invited now. Explain.
I'm going to let you explain. So, we only literally started interviewing guests from season 2 onwards, and we thought, we can't invite the Mel Jones until we've got an interview experience. And so we thought we'd first interview 2 other people actually 3 other people technically, who were really wonderful to interview, but we can't invite the Mel Jones before we've gotten that interview experience.
You sound like a brother got caught cheating. I'm sorry.
we are in PR, so we know our thing.
I was perfecting my technique, honey. I was perfecting my technique. Talk nonsense to me.
We are PR relations professionals.
We'll spin any story for you.
Yes.
We will spin. And nonetheless, thank you so much for joining us. I'm such a huge fan. And the last time I saw you was pre-corona when you were at the Cape Town Comedy Club, and I laughed my ass off with my cousin. We just enjoyed you so much. You were hilarious. So I am fangirling a little bit at the moment. Don't judge me, but we've really been looking forward to this interview. So I can't wait for us to really jump in and start getting to the nitty-gritty. And today we are discussing the Cape Flats culture and how we as colored people from Cape Town, and to some degree everyone or colored people all over the country, we take so much from the Cape Flats culture and claim it as ours. But, some of us are either A, not from there at all, or B, we moved out and we've given nothing back in reality, but we've taken so much from it. So it's a bit deep, but we are hoping to make it interesting and fun to talk about. So Mel, we know you from the Cape Flats, you're from Mitchell's Plain. Can you tell us more about yourself, where you grew up and how you got into comedy?
I was born in Bo-Kaap. I was born in McQuilton Flats. Well, I wasn't born in McQuilton Flats because we didn't do home births back then and all that other hippie stuff. We did actual hospital. I was born in St. Monica's Home, which was also in the Bo-Kaap. Upper Bloom Street we lived. And I lived there till I was about 6 years old. And then we moved to Mitchell's Plain. And I started school here. I'm the youngest of 3 siblings. So I have an older brother and an older sister.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm nothing like either of them, thank goodness, because we have our own personalities, no? And these are personalities I don't necessarily want. I love them to bits, but my brother is an academic of note. And I can't stand studying to the day. Everyone who goes to university and tertiary. I mean, I actually did a tertiary education. I went to a Peninsula Technicon at the time, now CPUT, and I studied marketing and sales management, and I majored in Clever Just. So
I feel like everyone who went to CPUT either majored in, like, I want to say dominoes, but it's actually dums. Either majored in dums, like shooting pool, or Clever Just.
Absolutely. Absolutely. The canteen was where we hung out all the time.
Exactly.
Yes, I was there too. And Kelly as well. Cool.
Yeah. Educated girls, we can still make something of ourselves even from being a major in Clever Just. And so, that was my study career. And I didn't obviously go into comedy straight afterwards because it wasn't something that I even considered. It was, like some people go like as comedians or as performers or as entertainers, they go, oh, it was something I knew I was going to get into. Comedy was not something that I was going to get into because firstly, women weren't doing comedy. A lot of women still aren't doing comedy. So it wasn't necessarily a career that someone would want to pursue when they are a young colored girl growing up in Cape Town. It's not a prominent thing. You didn't look at it and go, oh, there's so many people doing that, let me do it. And even if you saw 1 or 2 people doing it, it wasn't necessarily a career option, because we are raised to kind of be better, which brings me to, I think, something that you touched on in your intro. We always want to better ourselves. So we think that being better is necessarily letting go of our roots. But that's something we'll talk about a little bit later on. But I mean, comedy wasn't something that I thought of pursuing because it wasn't an option. And also we were all growing up in Mitchell's Plain because obviously displacement. I didn't realize it was displacement because I had a very sheltered childhood. My parents didn't talk to us about a lot of politics. They didn't talk to us about the state of unrest that we were going through at the time. I didn't even know that we were an endangered species, so to speak.
Don't you find, I'm sorry to interrupt you and go a little bit off topic, I guess, from the topic of the podcast, but don't you find that like the colored parents of a certain generation just never raised their kids to be woke, to use the term that all kids are using these days, never actually told us like what is going on. Like I saw the 94 elections on TV and I had no idea that it was a big deal. Just because it just wasn't a conversation that happened in our household at the time.
I think there was a generation, it wasn't necessarily just about politics, it was about everything. It was about things that were swept under the rug. It was about, I think our parents tried to be protective of us, but to our own detriment because we were shielded so much that we were unaware of our rights. We were unaware of our lack of, we were unaware of what we were able to find. And I mean, there were people who were having those conversations with their kids, and those kids kind of, I think, became activists, and some of them were more outspoken, and others sort of wanted to go a different route and completely ignore it and be oblivious to it because, ignorance is bliss. So I don't necessarily think that it was just a conversation about the political state of the country at that time. I think that it was also things like my periods. My mother didn't want to, you know what I mean?
Yes.
As you are becoming a young woman. And I was like, was I not a young woman before? Because I mean, I got my period when I was like 15. So that's late for someone. And it was, all of my friends were getting my periods and their periods, and I couldn't speak to anyone in my family about why I wasn't. And was there something wrong with me? And did I need to see a doctor? Or I couldn't speak about those things because that was not a conversation we were having. Because that's not a conversation. Your parents are your parents and they're in a different bracket and you are the child and you're in a different bracket. So we don't talk about things that adults are talking about, even though we are becoming adults. So I felt that I was always in this weird space between I'm expected to have all of these new responsibilities as someone who's growing up, but I'm not necessarily in a space where I'm privileged enough to be privy to information that I wasn't privy to before.
Yeah.
So it was very awkward and very uncomfortable. And because I am busybody, I try to find these things out for myself. And I try to, Google was here, Dungni. Google, there was never a Google when we were younger.
Yeah.
So, encyclopedia in the library.
Yeah. Me at my house, excuse me. We the Jones had our own encyclopedia.
Oh, excuse me.
Even in the plane, we had our own encyclopedia. So yes, so you kind of try and find the information, and sometimes it was misinformation, and that was the danger. And this is why I have such a good relationship with my son now, because I think that the conversations are important to have, no matter how uncomfortable they are, and no matter how uncomfortable they make you feel, or how uncomfortable they think they make you think your child is going to feel when you have those conversations. Because you want to be able to, you can't just say you must trust me and you must respect me. You must also give a little bit, your children are going to respect you and trust you if you open up to them. But that was, our parents did the best they could with what they had, and if they knew better, they would do better. That's like my favorite phrase. If they knew better, they would do better. So we can't be holding them accountable and pointing fingers. Now that we have all this information at our fingertips, we can literally go, hey, Google it.
Yeah, that's
Google is your friend.
Yeah.
Google is your friend, and as a grown-up, you have the responsibility to take advantage of all the information that you have and share it, and also share your opinions, but don't enforce them.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because a lot of people are like, this is how it is, especially growing up, a lot of people who grow up in like very religious backgrounds. This is how it is. This is how it must be.
Or just like old school thinking is just like that. Like just what I say goes, and
don't question anything, just accept.
Yes.
Yeah.
You can't actually like test your boundaries. Even those boundaries, you were told where those boundaries were, and like that is where the boundaries were. You couldn't actually test it.
Absolutely. But to my mom's, in my mom's defense, I was given a lot of freedom to explore who I am and what I loved and what I was passionate about, which is why I could get into comedy, which is why I did modern dance. For someone who grew up on the Cape Flats, we walked, we took taxis, we got into buses, we got into trains. My mom was so supportive of my passions and my creativity, and she wanted me to explore that because she also loved dancing, and she was also in the choir when she was younger in the Eowen group and that kind of thing. So she explored that side of her life. So she kind of allowed me to not, she wasn't, because look at how my sister is a tutor now. She was a teacher. My brother is an academic. He studied at UCT. He traveled. He speaks fluent French. So he's got that. Wow. Exactly. And I'm a creative, and I express myself through my writing and my comedy and my performance. And we are all very different persons. We have different personalities, but we were always allowed to express ourselves. Nothing was forced upon us. So to my mom, in my mom's defense, she gave that to us, and she was very supportive of us. So as much as we weren't allowed, and there were barriers and there were boundaries and there were lines we did not cross, there was also that side that that's true. Because I know that there weren't a lot of kids who, you must become a lawyer, you must become a doctor, because we didn't have the opportunities that you have now, so you must take advantage of it. And we were never told that. We were never forced to be in a box.
Yeah.
So I'm very grateful for that. So
and look at you and your siblings just like thriving now, like people from the Cape Flats and like you, like I say you especially, but I understand that in their like circles as well, your siblings have also obviously made a name for themselves in the world, which also makes me feel guilty to some degree, because I grew up in Sramondane, which is technically Mitchell's Plain, which no one like back in the day even wanted to admit to be honest with you, but that's a whole other conversation. And I moved out when I was about like 25. So I spent the most of my life there. I was born and raised in Sramondane. And if I'm honest, I haven't really actually given much back to the community that I come from. Yet, if you were to speak about JP Dumini now, I'd be like, no, that boy's from Sramondane. And if I read about someone that's like studied like something in science, whatever, and now they're in the UK because like they built a hybrid car or whatever, I'll be like, no, that girl's from the Cape Flats. So like I'm quick to say that I was born and raised in the Cape Flats, but I'm like quick to talk about the lack of support that the colored communities like ours actually get from local and national government. But if I'm honest with myself, I'm never really like quick to pour much like back into these communities myself or to support like up and coming talent or youth or whatever it is in these areas. So, which brings me to my next question. In your experience,
was there a question before this? I thought we were just talking.
No. There was sort of a question before this, but now, which brings me to my next question. Have you found that like people are like quick to claim your success as like a part of their to claim your success as a part of the Cape Flat story, but they weren't really there to support you on the way up? And I almost feel like that answer is obvious, but I really do want to know your story.
I feel that as human beings who grew up starting on the back foot, we need something to cling to.
Yeah.
And I don't, we can see it as like a Javasidani, but I also understand we did not have. I read something the other day that said, and I paraphrase because I don't quite remember exactly what it said, but it said something along the lines of privilege isn't the ability to have more, it is the ability to not have the lack of, or something along those lines.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So we had the lack of, so we know that we were not privileged. And I know that a lot of people who are now doing a lot with their lives, who come from a place of not privilege, previously disadvantaged, just sounds so shitty. So I don't like using it because it almost sounds like a crutch. It almost sounds like a little, like some makeup that we're putting on something to make it look pretty. And it's actually, like we didn't come from a place of previous disadvantage. We came from a place of struggle. We came from a place where we had to take 5 steps forward to even catch up to someone who was just born with.
Yeah.
So true.
So when you are looking at people who have made it, a JP Duminy, a Mark Lottery, when you are looking at someone who grew up not necessarily having the same stepping stones, the same silver spoons that everyone else had, you're looking at those people and you're kind of going, I want to be a part of that. I want to be able to say, yes, I am like. It's like having something that you've never had before that you can relate to and that you want to almost emulate. So
there's a representation you never had.
Yeah,
absolutely. Absolutely. In sport, in performance, in art, even in just high-ranking jobs, and not even as a brown person, just as a woman, to not have something to look at and say, that's mine.
Yeah.
I can be as much as, if not more than. So there's I get where it's coming from, and we're very hard on ourselves and we're very quick to judge and point fingers. But we also have to be able to share. Even though we did hard work, and as a woman, I feel very, very passionate about this. Even though we did the hard work, we've paved the way. Someone paved the way for me ahead of my time. And even if it was my mother who got up early to do the things that I didn't have to do because I could follow my passion. Even if it is my neighbor who built a better house so that our property values could be increased, or something small or something silly, or even if it's because it's that one woman who comes from a line of women who weren't allowed to work because that's not our culture. Now, the first woman in our family who's got a job and she can have her own money. She doesn't have to go to her husband or her father or a male patriarch version, or a person that is responsible for the family who is a male.
Yeah.
You don't have to now go and depend on that person because you are the first independent human female in your family. And now the women who come after you can look at you and go, you did it, so can I.
Yeah.
So I
that.
get where you're coming from in terms of, yeah, mense kan so gou, because there are those people who can quickly forget where they come from, and they don't take a step back, or they don't even look back over their shoulders and they go, I'm done with that. I've moved on. And yes, they're entitled to do that because they have their own story and they have their own journey and they have their own battles. And we all have to just be a little more forgiving because we all come from a place of hurt. We all come from a
Yeah.
place of anguish and suffering and pain, and we all get over it our own way. And okay, yeah, some people can also just skrik a bietjie wakker, and you didn't. You didn't just make it on your own. There was a team of people behind you. But okay, now we see you. Even though you don't see us, we see you. We see you, and you making a cut of yourself. But that's okay.
Yeah.
If making a cut of yourself is the legacy you want to leave for yourself, that's also okay.
That's fine.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But yeah, if we're looking at like the whole picture, we've got to take a few steps back and go, you know what, we didn't come from the same place as a lot of people who were born into someone who had already owned a business and was always already making it.
Yeah.
So it's fine. If they want to claim it, they can claim it. Just don't tell me that you helped me get to where I was, because I tell you.
And I love what you said earlier about, like my mother, them, for example, they were told either you're going to be a teacher or a nurse. So all of my aunties are either teacher or nurse. And like you said, there's always that one person who showed you there's something more. And for me, it was someone who was in the same church as mine, and she actually took me to her job to go job shadow, and she was a hot shot at Levi's HQ in town. And she was such a badass, and I had no idea that you could get into this line of work. I didn't know that a colored woman can go in to a meeting with heads of Nike and Edgar's and all these people and talk about branding. That to me was something brand new. And I think that's what made me feel like, okay, I can study public relations. I can work in comms because I've seen this woman do it. And she was she doesn't even probably know what a big influence she had on me because she only knew me for a couple of years. But seeing another colored woman who also grew up on the Cape Flats, who had a lot of struggles that she had to deal with, she could do it. So that meant I could as well. So I really resonate with what you said. It's amazing.
Absolutely. And I think that as women, we need to be a little more supportive of each other. It's good to have that because I think we were also raised in a space of scarcity. So our mindset is that of scarcity. So when I'm looking at myself as a woman in a position of, I'm doing comedy and there aren't a lot of us, instead of me trying to cling to that one thing that I have, why not make it more accessible? Why not share it with more people? Because that way, the more people who do it, the more people see it can be done.
Yeah.
Because I also found that a lot of people tend to do the opposite of that. They go, I'm so scared because I don't want to show someone else the ropes, because what if they become a better person at the job than I am? And no sukkel ek 'n bietjie because the other can see I'm actually not so quiet. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Now they see I was actually a fuck. And I bluffed my way through the whole thing. Do you know what I mean? I'm not saying that those people got there by doing that, but don't be afraid to show a weakness and have other people show you a better way, even though they're less qualified than you, or have them show you a better way, and then that way we all learn together. But because we come from, like I said, because we come from a place of scarcity, it is our nature. We are conditioned to feel like if I get something good, I've got to hold on to it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like even in relationships, if I get a good man, I must hold on to him because net no kom hier skaramonkel, and then she wants to come and take my man. If your man wants to be shared, share him. Go find yourself one who does not want to be shared.
Yeah,
you know
exactly.
What I mean?
Absolutely. Amen.
Like, I'm not gonna lie, I often say that, like, because I am an English-speaking colored, so I'm from South, an English-speaking colored.
I know where you're going with this. The struggle is real.
Yeah, went to school in like Kirstenhof and then the Constantia Weinberg area. So I often say, like, colored girls from the Cape Flats like don't like me. Like, well, initially, like initial impressions are that like the colored girls in the Cape Flats don't like me, and I do find that in like fields such as ours, where it's like in journalism and comms and PR and whatever it may be, there is this competitiveness that is amongst like colored girls, especially. Oh, like I say girls, but I'm like a grown ass woman, like colored women, especially, where it's just like you want to keep it for yourself. But like you say, like it's something like to be shared. There are people who like need our knowledge and like need our skills or whatever it may be, just like to share our insights, and it's something to be shared. But for me, if like another colored woman or even just a woman in general like comes into my space, that I've sort of like owned for a while, immediately I'm like on alert and I'm like, I'm suspect already.
No, but that's we were conditioned to be that way, guys.
Yes, it's
We need to
conditioning.
we need to unlearn that shitty behavior. We need to train ourselves to have a little more self-awareness, to be a little more confident in ourselves, because guys, please remember that we actually don't we were not raised to be. Men can be in a competitive environment in a boardroom, and then they walk out of that competitive environment and go play golf with each other, then they're chummies. Women are not raised the same way. Women are not raised the same way. We are not conditioned to be the same way. So it's very difficult for us to kind of jump into that role. And so, yes, we do feel threatened when there's another woman who we see as more beautiful, more talented, taller, more shorter, with a nicer bum, with nicer legs, with more social skills, with just something that's a little better than we think we are able to provide, then we almost are on the back foot. Instead of just being a little more open to receive each other. But I mean that's conditioning, and it's going to take a long time for us to actually get out of that state of mind.
It's going to take a long time, and I've seen, especially in the entertainment spaces, women have become way more supporting of each other, especially in the comedy space. Like I follow Lindy Johnson, who's from Paul, I believe, who's now living in Joburg. It's just so nice to see on social media everyone celebrating young talent coming up. And I love that. And I know we speak about, we have this lack mentality or the survival thing where we have to cling on to what's ours. That's how, frankly, white people have been flourishing, because they share with their kids, they share with people who are coming up. And that's how they just keep pushing forward. And we need to do the same thing. We need to understand.
I think that, if we could have it's not necessarily about sharing skills and let's all now just everybody go to university, and we could have like little mentorship programs with kids in our own community. We could, sometimes it's not even that big. Sometimes it's a conversation. Sometimes it's just, you see a girl who's doing the thing, and you go, I would do it like this. Yeah. Sometimes it's literally just that. From my experience, it works better if you do it like this. And it's not necessarily the person who's got the most experience. Sometimes it's someone who came in doing the job an hour ago, and they learned a new way of doing things. And so now they go, but guys, this is what works for me. And everybody goes, I've been doing it like this my whole life. I didn't know it could be simpler. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. No, we're not having those conversations. And that's the problem.
No, for sure, that is the problem. Yes, I will never forget when I was in my clubbing days, back in the day. I used to get like really mean. I used to get
5 years ago.
I used to get like really mean with like other girls for no reason in particular, other than like she probably looked like her hair was probably GHD that night and mine wasn't. I don't know. And that is just something that we are taught, even like subconsciously all the time. And I just I've like tried to unlearn that as I've gotten older. And I think like once I hit 30, I just got over it. I was like, I don't have time to be like petty and bitchy with anyone.
Self-awareness is gonna be your best friend for a long, long time.
Yeah.
How do you think you've grown, Mal, like as yourself with self-awareness? How did you, over the years, what did you learn? What were some experiences that made you realize, okay, this is how I should grow. This is what I can take with me from a particular event or situation?
I don't even think it was the learning. I just think it was like I stopped listening to people's opinions who I didn't trust, I didn't even care about. Like, I think that we've spent so much time adding value to people who actually don't have our best interests at heart. They don't know us. Like, there were many, when I started doing comedy, there were people who came off stage. Guys who said this meeting has been upgraded by the host and now includes unlimited.
Yeah,
Are we going?
no.
Okay,
I upgraded us. I upgraded us.
Yes, Queen.
I upgraded us so we could have a longer conversation.
Lekker, let me upgrade you, let me upgrade. And now we carry on to be continued and action. So, I don't even think it was a learning. I think a lot of it was an unlearning, and a lot of it was just having more faith in myself. And not because the other thing that I realized growing up on the Cape Flats, and I don't know if this was a Cape Flats thing or if it was a female thing or if it was just like a birthright thing, but I was a people pleaser for so long. And I just, people aren't going to like you. You mustn't do that. Was such a famous line in our family. My grandmother said it to my mother said it to us. And I don't know if like generations before them said it to them, but it was such an odd thing once I came to the realization that if people don't like me, they can fuck off. I actually, you know what I mean? Yes, I've got a potty mouth, and I apologize to those.
Oh, no, please don't apologize.
So do we.
Now that we know we can say all these words, we will, although my mom is listening, so maybe I won't, but still.
I mean, the amount of times I paid attention to people who were talking cock. Just because they wanted to be heard, because a lot of people are projecting their own insecurities. So I used to walk off stage, and then some man would come up to me and try and give me advice about how to be a better comic. And just some worse, sitting in the audience. He probably doesn't even have a job. Do you know what I mean? So now, why are you telling me how to be a better comic when you haven't had a decent public speaking event in your life? You can barely speak up in the office when your boss talks to you or your pet. I can't actually, you know what I mean? Like, just the whole idea of someone coming up to me giving advice because they think that I need their advice, as opposed to they want to help me improve me.
Yeah.
But also, in order for you to help or to want me to improve, genuinely want me to improve, you have to care about me, and you can't care about me because you don't know me. So there's this whole, is your opinion valid? What is in it for you versus what's in it for me? And if there's more in it for you, then actually I don't need to be paying attention to this conversation. I can agree with you and we can move swiftly along so that you can feel better about your life, because we all know that this is about your ego and not my career choice or not whatever it is that we're talking about at this moment. But honey, if saying yes to you just to appease you is going to get you to shut up, then I'm going to say yes.
Yeah.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. You are correct.
I have a quick question. I'm sorry I keep interrupting. I'm so sorry. Just like as
no, that's fine.
I want to ask you. So quickly, or long, it doesn't matter, whatever. But I wanted to know. So, like, honestly, do you find that as like a woman of color, especially, and just be honest, like, is the comedy world more or less susceptible or more accepting of you as a woman of color than there are to men, obviously, and our Caucasian counterparts? And do you find that, like, when you reach out, like, to brands, as an example, let's say you want to work with, I won't mention brands, but let's say you want to work with X brand and you reach out to them and they are like, and they just don't respond or they decline or whatever. But then they will reach out to you only when they need a woman of color in their campaign. Do you find in your world
I feel that answer is obvious. I feel that it's the same in all. I feel that it's not just an entertainment thing. That I think that it's the same for all women of color, and not just women of color, just women in general. We are still being overlooked, hugely overlooked in whatever. I mean, this is why that the car advert on TV with the first pilot is so huge. It has such a deep impact on a lot of women. The advert where the woman goes, who are you? Who do you think you are? Because yes, a lot of women do get that. In the standard 2021 people, and people are still being asked, who do you think you are? And less so because I'm a woman of color, but more so because I'm a woman. Because I know that a lot of men of color are getting a lot of opportunities more than I.
They are.
So yes, there's the fact that I'm a woman, but there's also the fact that I'm a woman of color. But I'm not going to sit here and feel like I'm a victim. I did not get this far in my career and in my life to be a victim and lay in a corner and cry and be, if you don't want to work with me, you're lost, honey. I know what I bring to the table. And if I have to pay for it myself, I will pay for the shit myself. I did not come from a place of, I feel so sorry for myself. I am a fighter. Everyone has a fight or flight reflex. I have a fight gene. I know that because, like I said before, like my parents and my mom, especially my mother. My mother, I only recently found out, had her own hardships because, they shielded us from that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And she fought through that to become, and yes, she didn't have like a high school diploma. And yes, she didn't have like the best paying job. She worked in a retail store and she didn't, you know what I mean? But she fought so that her children could have a better life. And I will fight so that my son can have a better life. And I will also fight so that I can have a better life. So that I can walk away from this. And some woman somewhere can go, my life is better today because someone before me did something that I was afraid to do or that other women were afraid to do. So if I have to fight that battle, I will fight that battle. And I don't have to be dependent on a man. I don't have to be dependent on my parents. I never was because they weren't well off. We lived from hand to mouth. We kind of like made ends meet. So I had to learn to be able to depend on myself from a very young age. And I will continue to depend on myself. So I haven't depended on my parents. I haven't depended on a man. I'm not married. So, honey, I'm not going to depend on your brand. I'm not.
I love that.
Don't need to put steps in front of me for me to make it up. I will build my own ladder.
Yeah.
I will build my own ladder. And it may be harder, but that way I can look at myself in the mirror and go, you did this alone by yourself for you. And those people who turned you down, sorry for them. Sorry for you.
You keep talking about your mother, and I love it. I'm sorry, Amber. I feel like I'm dominating the question.
No, I am just sitting here listening and sipping and talking because I love all the comments.
You keep bringing up your mother, and I really love that because I don't think I've actually sat until now, and I am ashamed to say it, and thought about how much my mother must have gone through. There is a generation of mothers, as an example, who went through like a fight to make sure that their kids could get what they didn't have. And no offense to my dad, who also was very much in the picture and everything, but like I can only imagine what our mothers must have gone through as women of color at the time. In order to ensure that their kids had better and had more and had everything. And I don't think I've actually really looked at my mother and thought, yes, mommy, you must have really like put in like a good fight. Whether it be, I don't think she was ever out in like the streets actually protesting or whatever, but she worked like damn hard to make sure that in 92, her daughter, so not me, my sister, in 92, her daughter was able to get into a school that was like a so-called white school.
And I love that because sorry, Kelly, that's your word. I'm thinking the same thing because my mother's going to clap me now, but like my father is genuinely one of the most terrible people to ever exist. I mean, I'm named after a betting horse, for crying out loud. So for me, my name was going to be something else. And he went, no, I always go bet on this horse named Amber Beauty. Her name's going to be Amber. But anyway, so like, I know she had to fight a lot of battles, but she's never shown that to me outwardly. She's always just kept up this brave face, just saying, I did what I had to do, and I'm happy with where you are right now. So I think as colored people, as colored women in particular, we could all spend a lot of time maybe just having, now that we've grown up, these conversations with our mothers and just saying, sometimes it's okay to tell me what you went through. Do you want to talk about it? Because if women go through so much.
They didn't have those conversations with their parents or their siblings or anybody. So now that you're a strong woman, and this brings me back to something you said earlier about people giving back to the community. I think that a lot of people feel guilt about not giving back to the community, but giving back to the community can be done in so many different ways. It can be in the form of, like I said, the mentorship. It can also be in the form of just literally talking to a young girl of color and saying, you know that this is available to you. You know that, just passing on information. Sometimes it's having a podcast where other women of color or not can listen to it and go, I didn't know that was going on. I didn't know that these were conversations we should be having. I didn't even look at my mother in that way. Sometimes that is the giving back. And sometimes it is giving back to our parents. It's not necessarily always giving back to a younger generation. Sometimes we look at our parents and we go, you know, you did this, you did, but it's easy to point a finger, but we don't know what we went through. And like I said earlier, if they knew better, they would do better. But for us as kids who are now stronger because we've empowered ourselves, because we're in a generation now where that empowerment is available to us, and we have women that we can talk to about silly things or deep things or funny things. We can have whatever conversations without judgment. And now we can take that back to our mothers who did not have that same privilege. So we can say, if there's a conversation that you've always wanted to have with another woman, I can be that woman for you. I have had some of those conversations with my mother because I know that her upbringing was so much more difficult than mine. So much more. I mean, if you think about it, my mom's 80. And if you think about it, she didn't have, even when she was married, like she went from having not having her own say or her own voice in her house to being married to someone who was sort of also like the dominant force. So there was always someone above her, so to speak. There was always someone that she almost had to kind of report to. So she was never allowed to be her own person. And I find that a lot of people from generations before us had the same kind of problem. You had to be a housewife and you had to depend on your husband, and you couldn't work for yourself because you had to raise the children. And even if you did have to raise the child, you still had to kind of be part housewife, because who's going to do the chores and who's going to forget met Johanna dan Tita.
Johanna dan Tita.
My mom's favorite saying, is Johanna dan Tita. Because when I told her that, she just clinged to it, and that's what she says now for like ever. But I mean, so when you talk about giving back to the community, and giving back to where you come from, there's no greater giving back to where you come from than the actual person that you come from.
Yeah.
You get what I'm saying?
I literally WhatsApp my mother now.
I must keep it light, but I'm sorry.
I WhatsApp my mother now. And I said, Mommy, I just want you to know that I love you and I'm so thankful for everything you've done for us. I said, I know this is very random. I'll discuss it with you.
Drunk jy my kind.
But I said, I know this is very random, but I want you to know that I really am appreciative of everything you've done. And I don't even think I must have thought about it. I'm not a selfish person by nature, but I must have at least like thought about it once, but I don't think I've really like taken stock and thanked her for what she's done. And I know that like my grandmother, for example, I don't think my grandmother ever finished high school. And she lived in Tilbach, and she had to leave school and actually go to work because she needed to earn an income to help her family. Then she ended up working for a white family in like Camps Bay at some point when she moved to Cape Town. Who were very good to her, but still a white family nonetheless. And so there were rules and things in place that they had to follow. And like me, as like someone I was born towards like the end of apartheid, or let's say the end, like towards the late 80s, and so like towards the end sort of. And then, but I didn't grow up in apartheid, so I don't actually know the struggles and know what they went through. So for me, I've lived like this sheltered life. I keep saying I grew up in Strandfontein, like it's like something like a badge that I wear. But like I grew up in Strandfontein, which was a new area at the time. And my parents had just moved in, I've got very fair like colored parents, to be honest with you. And so there is an amount of like privilege that comes with being a fair person of color. And I don't think I've really like taken stock of just like where my life is at as a result of my history and what my parents have done and what my mother must have done. Because my mother is a hardworking lady. Like she started working when she was in her early 20s, if not earlier, if I'm not mistaken. And she hasn't stopped. So I don't think I've really taken stock. And this conversation has really made me just want to drive to her house and just give her, like, a little bit of a hug and be like, thank you. Thank you so much.
Now, because you had one.
Yeah, please just maybe tomorrow morning.
I want to hear about Papa vir jou gewag. And then I'm awkward.
Also not giving hugs right now because COVID, but maybe,
Also that.
Little A hug.
Virtual hugs are the theme of the day.
Yes.
And I love the way this conversation has gone. And I actually love that you chose this way, Mal, for us to do it, because the questions we actually prepared have just gone out the fucking window.
Okay, all the questions?
No. I'm loving the way it's going now because it's given, well, at least me, I've got a lot to think about now, just the way we view our world. And like Kelly said, she had a very, not sheltered, but you grow up and your parents keep certain things from you. And I think there's a lot to be said for the way that we would raise our children should we choose to have them. Are we going to choose to also shelter them? Are we going to be more open? What is the best way to do things? And I think as colored people, we aren't at the space yet where we have the privilege to not know how the odds are stacked against us.
Yeah.
So, it's our responsibility as adults now to share this with younger people and, younger siblings or people in our family. And it's just,
admit. So,
also, sorry, ladies, also to claim our birthright, because I don't think that we realize that we belong here.
Yeah.
There's so much that we are trained to believe that when we are given a compliment, we almost feel embarrassed by it.
That is
just things like claiming your birthright, because actually you belong here. You deserve to take up as much space as any other person of any other color and any other gender, whatever their preference may be. You deserve to take up as much space. You do not need to be cowering into a corner and hiding in the shadows. You can be as outspoken and as witty and smart and intelligent and fun and gregarious and audacious as you choose to be, because you are here for a reason and you deserve to take up that space. And if you take up that space, you give other people permission to take up the same space, because they are not seeing enough women speak out in a caring, loving, nurturing way. Everyone feels like, I need to say it loud, and I need to be aggressive about it. You don't need to be aggressive about it. You don't have to be like a Amandla person all the time, guys. We can't be Amandlaing still, man. We need to also go take someone by the hand and go, it is okay to be you. It's okay to be here. Because as a woman, we are already born with a disadvantage. How so many, especially in this culture, in some cultures, you are praised to be a woman. But in this culture, in India, in this culture in particular, if you are born a female child, a lot of male parents don't get excited. I want a boy. Still in this day and age. So your very birth is already a disappointment. And I discovered quite recently, because I was born and then my mommy was in the ward with another woman. And then that woman gave birth to a boy. And then the nurse came running out and my dad was waiting in the waiting room and she said, it's a boy. And my dad got duck excited. So he went to the phone and he phoned everybody. He's like, the boy is a boy. And then the other nurse came out of my mother's ward, because she obviously thought that my dad was the husband of the other woman. So the other nurse came out and said, Mr. Jones. And my dad came running, yes, your wife, Val, gave birth to a girl.
Wow.
And his face just fell.
From my first breath, girls, I was a disappointment. Can you beverly it?
Just for
just by being born, I was a disappointment. So I had a lot of making up to do, and that is probably why I like being on stage talking, because sometimes your life is just so that you must make a joke of it. And that is just how life is.
And I love what you said earlier about like you don't have to be a man like the whole time. Like as a woman, just being in a space like entertainment or in our field of comms, there's this pressure for you to just be revolutionary the whole time, just because there's so few women in that space. And sometimes it's nice to just realize you don't have to always be standing up, and making all this. Just be yourself, just be who you are fully, and help the other women that you can get to the space where you are or to grow even bigger. It's just, you don't have to always feel like everything is a struggle. It doesn't always have to be right fist in the air, You can also just take a beat and just relax and just do your best and do what makes you feel
Because your arm will get tired if it's in the air the whole time. Guys.
Exactly.
And what are you going to sip the wine with if your arm is up there the whole time? How are you going to hold your glass?
So true.
Have a free hand to hold your glass.
I do feel the pressure, like, am I like being loud enough about the issues that we face as women and women of color? Am I like speaking up enough? Am I like doing enough? Like I don't go to marches. Like, so what does that like say about me? So it is good to know that I don't actually have to. I can just sit at home and drink wine and maybe just help my fellow a colleague or just like a young person, like my cousin or whoever it may be. And like that is enough. We don't have to be the loudest voice and the person in the crowd to actually make a difference in another woman's life or anyone's life.
Having one conversation with one other woman and empowering them is already doing a lot more than a lot of our fellow people before us who just sat still and did nothing and chose silence. And
that's true.
Especially with the gender-based violence, if you are helping one woman get out of an abusive relationship, because we cannot depend on the men to be having these conversations. It's not going to happen fast enough. It's going to take a whole nother generation for us to get to where we want to be. But if we are helping one other woman to get out of an abusive relationship, if we are having a conversation with a woman to see the signs, because there's a grooming process that happens before, and no one is talking about that grooming process.
It's hardly spoken about.
No, exactly. So if people can become aware of the signs of the grooming and like the little manipulative traits and slight, you can see, you can sense, and you can be aware of it, and you can kind of go, there's something not right here. And the minute you're asking yourself, what's wrong with this picture, is the minute you maybe need to be taking a step back.
Yeah.
Because the longer you stay there, the more you empower him to execute his plan. And we don't need to be helping toxic men display their toxic masculinity.
Hell no.
That's a whole different conversation.
That is
another conversation for another time. But
another time. I think we've covered like quite a bit in this chat. And honestly, I could have this conversation forever and ever and ever. But
you will run out of wine.
Oh, I already have, and I've got the food's been made. My husband's already made food, and the boys are waiting. So I'm gonna have to wrap this up if you don't mind. I mean, honestly, I don't mind. Go on forever. But are there any last words, like from your side, Mal or Amber? Is there anything you really want to ask, like Mel Jones, about? I love saying your name. Anything you really want to ask Mel Jones about before we end things off?
I think instead of a question, I just have a thank you. Like, I just want to say thank you for bringing such an authentic voice to the podcast. I mean, it's so important for us as colored women who have such little spaces to have these kind of talks, have these discussions and conversations. And I think that's why so many colored women in South Africa have reached out to us and said, oh my word, I resonate so much with what you're saying. And men have so much access to these kind of conversations. They talk about sports and soccer and whatever other All Black Cup. But such little... and Crusaders and Hurricanes and whatever.
You know, go.
My whole family's All Blacks. They're going to slaughter me when they hear this. But anyway, it's fine. It's just so important for us to have conversations, whether they be heavy things or just light things, just things that we can relate to. things that we know, okay, it's not just me experiencing this. I've got people that I can lean on, that I can resonate with. So thank you so much, Mal, for being here. And please come back to the podcast.
Absolutely. Invite me back. I'll come back anytime.
Thank you
just
so
wanna
much.
say-
We can unpack.
One little thing before I go. If you forget anything in your life, do not forget that you matter. No matter what skin you're in, no matter what gender you are, no matter what area you grew up in, no matter how your birth came about, no matter what your family situation was before this, you matter. You deserve to be here. You belong here. You deserve to take up space. And someone somewhere is going to look at you and go, I am happy that I met this person, and I'm so glad that they are in my life. So it's important to know your worth.
Thank you.
I love that.
Love that. And me personally, I am happy that we have met you and interviewed you.
Yes.
Just from this one conversation, I've learned I've learned so much, but also I have so much to think about. And I mean, it feels weird to head into official business now. But if anyone wants to follow Mel Jones and catch her on the shows or see what she's up to, please do have a look at the episode description, and we'll share the details on our social media pages. You can find us on Instagram and on Facebook at Brown Girls Guide Pod, and on Twitter at BGG Pod, and drop us a mail on info@browngirlsguide.co.za if you have any questions or anything you want us to discuss, any upcoming guests that you are keen on. I mean, we'll happily just interview Mal for the next 6 episodes.
Yeah, no problem at all.
But for this one, we've got to wrap it up. So from us, it's good night and cheers, and we will chat again next time. Mal, thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks. We will chat soon.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.